Mr. Narinesingh, good morning, man.
Hey, Stefan, morning, Trinidad and Tobago.
Nice. Have you used the public toilet at Citygate anytime?
Quite often, man.
Quite
That has
often.
happened quite often. Yes, but I'll say something quickly on that, Stefan. Let me tell you this. Just for the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago to consider the practicality of it. It will take 100 persons using the washroom for them to make $200.
Yeah.
You check $200 for a bill of toilet paper and consider how much toilet paper somebody might be using. And you ain't check water, you ain't check maintenance of
Correct.
plumbing. The reason, guys, come on, is because Trinis tend to not have respect for something that is free. That's another tip, right?
Yeah.
And you find that $2, as somebody was pointing out, will keep out the people who really not passing through to use it, but really using it as their personal
Yeah.
facilities.
Yeah.
Because so, I mean,
I don't see any problem with it. I really don't see a problem with it. But I tend to agree with the caller. I'm not going to pay $2 for a facility that is not up to scratch and is dirty. So I'm not going to pay $2 for that. Do the renovations, nice up the thing, and we'll pay $2. No problem. And I could see that point.
yeah. So,
Right?
I mean, so let's jump into this thing. I don't know if I'm certain you would have seen the press conference held by the ministers of national security and public utilities.
Oh yes.
Um,
Yes.
Friday. Yeah, so it was a real interesting press conference because the Minister of National Security made some comments. Now, I'm not judging the comments. As far as he in his capacity as the Minister of National Security, he was given fair warning as far as I'm concerned to the public. But what I think happened in the melee that took place over the weekend and into this week, I think it went unnoticed, and it is something that is noteworthy not only for the public sector but also for the private sector institutions. Actually, quite recently, I have had an experience with a particular trade union where the trade union representative, and I shouldn't say the trade union, the union, because quite often, from what we have in Trinidad and Tobago, is that the trade union fraternity or the trade union as an entity is judged based on the actions of the trade union representative. That
Okay.
is appointed by virtue of an election to represent the interests of the institution. So no one person's personality or their conduct should become a measuring tool for what the value of an institution represents. And that's what we have in Trinidad and Tobago. We have some horrible trade union leaders, some who cause this perspective of a negative perspective to become the stereotype that is applied to the institution that is a trade union, right?
Okay.
So this is what my concern really is in regards to the comments being made, and not about the minister making the comments, but really the fact that the comments may have been missed by the public and general public. So let me just quickly quote, or I will just paraphrase what the minister was implying.
Yeah.
He was, of course, about the issue at Wassa, where we saw that the booster station in California stopped working, was unable to function as a consequence of
Vandalism.
well, yeah, they say vandalism. Well, the vandalism, I think there was
Sabotage.
they use a whole different thing. That's why
Yeah.
I'm very careful. So as far as I'm concerned, it stopped working, and the police investigation indicated that people took out the functioning resources, which led to right. So he has they have they've the minister alluded to the, as a matter of fact, he referred to the Industrial Relations Act repeatedly in the press conference. And I just want to sensitize the public on the implications of it, what he was alluding to.
Okay.
Now, the Industrial Relations Act in the section 7 defines industrial action. And of course, it means strikes, and I'm quoting here, strikes, lockouts, any action, boycott by any number of workers, and industrial action could be taken by a trade union or an employer. So employers can take industrial action too by virtue of locking out their staff and that kind of thing.
Right.
And, so it also includes things like this: sit down, strike, go slow, and sick out, right? And sick out, as what we may be aware of, is where a mass amount of staff members take quote unquote sick leave. So they use claim. Now the act does address that, and I'm not going to go too much into that today because we will, as we normally do, we will emphasize on different things in the course of our shows.
Right.
But the Industrial Relations Act does, Section 77 does make provisions for addressing any false claim of sick leave. But these things are all considered industrial action. Now, Section 66, from Section 60 all the way to Section 73 or thereabout, covers industrial action. And it defines, and this anybody in Trinidad and Tobago, guys, you can download a copy of this on your any regular smartphone, and it will open as a PDF document. Now, what the minister was pointing to is specifically he made mention that the water services and electricity services at Trinidad and Tobago are essential services. And pointed out that the provisions of the IRA section. Well, he didn't say the sections, but I'm telling you all, it starts with Section 60 and moves all the way down to Section 73.
Okay.
And it speaks on industrial, not how it's applied, how it's supposed to work, and how the institutions that are essential services are not allowed to take industrial action in a certain form.
Right.
Now, 20,000, 20,000, 10,000, a union can become decertified, that kind of thing, if they are found to be taking illegal industrial action. Now, what I want to point out is the minister did, and I'm going to read what I captured. He said, we have a history of such pushback by disrupting either the free flow of traffic on the road or disrupting the systems that contribute to water and electricity. So we are not unmindful of the great possibility of that which the minister just explained. He was referring to the minister.
So Minister Gonzalez, yeah.
Yeah. And all of the public talk about the theft of copper, that there might be those who may very well use these opportunities to perpetrate more sinister motives against the state for their own limited, perhaps own selfish, perhaps even political purposes. Now, what I'm concerned about, Stefan, is that we have workers in Trinidad and Tobago, and we have a system that allows for these workers to, under the Act, to take legitimate industrial action or to hold protests and that kind of thing.
Right.
And this implies, and the minister tied it in with even we went as far as to quote refer to the Anti-Terrorism Act.
Yes.
So what we have to be mindful of, and we have to be careful of, is that we don't mix up circumstances that require the police intervention and the enforcement of laws that protects our nation and its people with laws that guide legitimate processes that allow for the freedom of expression and the freedom of advocating for your rights and for your dignity.
Right.
Not as a worker, but as a citizen, because we have seen that citizens voice their concerns via these action of, well, people might block the road. Now, I don't condone burning tires, although of course, in the years that I've been, when I was a trade unionist, I participated in activities, and it's on public record. You see, when after we burn our uniform on the mountain point, Lisas, and that kind of thing.
Right.
We block the road, we protest, we walk in the road and that kind of thing. But what I'm saying is there are circumstances that would call for a strong response in the form of protest that will include disruptions. And I think that the citizenry needs, like the ministers or members of the public, a public office make comments, they need to be very careful that they don't cast aspersions over legitimate circumstances that could allow the police or police officers and members of the protective services are just like us, you know. And you notice the army being deployed, the military being redeployed to protect some of these assets.
Right.
He said also these circumstances could also create an environment where members of the public who are engaged in legitimate action could now come under a serious reaction from, you know, our protective services because they are misunderstanding what is provided for in law.
Right.
So I think a little responsible communication needs to take place. And I think also the trade union fraternity needs to be a little more effective in how they communicate. I understand they're doing a thing on Friday, Stefan, in Port of Spain. They're doing a mass protest action.
Yeah, they have a whole march with a whole route, everything, 3 music trucks, the full works.
Yeah, and I think I didn't hear anybody say anything. Maybe I missed it. I don't look at all the news and I don't look at all the stations. I look at your station for sure. But I think maybe this is where, you know, the concern is, because remember, the trade union fraternity has a responsibility, and I think over the couple of years now, they have been losing their focus, Stefan. And just to add one last thing on this before, I know we're running out, and we have a couple of minutes, and I guess you may have a question for me or two. We see where we are with the wage negotiation.
Yeah, 4%.
Yeah, but I want to make a radical switch. You ever hear this saying, while the grass growing, the horse starving?
Yeah.
You know, as an employer, the state, you're in contention with the union. The question is, what stops you from giving these people the money you say you can afford to pay now, whilst you continue your endeavors to finalize the negotiation? Why can't you just, you said you have 4%, why can't you just give me the 4% now as your employee? You know, all this back pay, back and all and thing. Pay me what I have now, and in the interim, are you and my representative finalizing? Why do you have to wait? If you say this is what you could afford, and the truth is, this is a radical thing. I don't think it's ever been done, but there's nothing in law, and I've looked at it, that prevents an employer from increasing, whether you have a union or not, from increasing the salary of an employee, you know, because it's a positive, it's something positive to the terms and conditions.
Okay.
What they're not is to reduce, so they're not allowed to negatively impact, but nothing is stopping the government are trying to make from saying, listen, this is what we can afford, and we're not going to wait and haggle politically over whether is enough or too little bit. Let's give the people what we say we can afford now, because they need the money now. And the interim of us finalizing our agreement, maybe we might go up or maybe we wouldn't. I don't know, because that could go to court and spend years in the court, you know.
Right.
But I'm going to pay you what I say I can afford and what I have for you, and then we will take it from there. And I think that if the government is serious about alleviating the suffering of its workforce, they're not going to continue to allow that That how much years, Stefan? 2013 to now is how much years? That is
That's
what, seven
nine. That is 9 years. It's 9 years we're talking about.
and going into 3 years of the economic challenges related to a pandemic. Why? Even more than, as a matter of fact, the pandemic is a legitimate reason for the government to decide, listen, here's what's going on. I'm not going to follow the mold that we have been following for the last 7 years. I am going to set that aside and give my people what I can afford to give them.
Right. But I mean,
what do you think about that?
well, in a world where the people come first, what you're saying makes sense. But we know how all the little games are played, all the little political tricks and everything that is involved in all these wage negotiations and the timing of it and so on and so forth. I think I personally think it's ridiculous that workers have been put on the sideline with their wage negotiations for the last 8 to 9 years, right? Especially when you went into a pandemic and it is the essential workers that you were praising, and all they get is a tin of biscuit. And I had to mention that because with all the praise over the last 2 years of the essential services and the nurses and this one and the other one and the police and that, all the praises that you give them with old talk, that is old talk. People want old talk, especially when you have inflation, when you have increased gas prices, when you have increased food prices, where everything is increasing. People want something extra in the pocket. They don't want old talk and a tin of biscuit. And I thought that was the biggest insult to essential workers in Trinidad and Tobago, was this, the man in him give them a big tin of the biscuit, you know. You know the big tin that he just buy for Christmas? He him get a big tin, you know, he get a small tin, so, but with about 5 or 6 biscuits in it. I mean, workers themselves have to be, you ought to have a certain level of pride for what you do, or pride of, a certain level of pride in yourself. And reject things like that. Because to me, that's an insult. If I was in the health sector and that's what they come to hand me, I would have hand them back. I'm being honest with you. I don't care if it's the minister. I hand you back. I don't want that. Because, and it's not just a handing you back because it's a tin of biscuit, you know. I handing you back because my wage negotiations have not come to the fore as a topic of discussion for 8 years. It's not like we deal with 2 and we just on 1 wage negotiation for the past 3 years or 4 years or whatever the case might be, but you're dealt with 2 wage negotiations where I get a little 4% increase, and then I get another 3% increase or whatever the case might be. There was nothing for them. As a matter of fact, they were told that you could get your back pay, but my loss your work. And these were the things that were being thrown at people. The police service now, we have an escalating crime rate. I have to ask myself, is the escalating crime rate somehow connected to the lack of wage negotiations and proper salary increases to the police service in order to motivate them to deal with crime the way that they're supposed to deal with crime, to bring it down? So is it that we have particular public services that drop in their hand in their performance because they're just not motivated? We all know that motivation is directly linked to your salary. It directly linked. They could try to spin it and twist it and turn it. But when you pay somebody what they're worth, they will perform at the highest level. If they feel underpaid and undervalued, they will not perform. It's just natural. You know? And then in terms of former protests and stuff, just before we run out of time, we only have about a minute or so, but it doesn't matter, minute, Director. But just in terms of protests, look at the day of total policing that went on. It's years ago. The police can't protest. They can't come out and march. The other day of total policing, they said it wasn't a protest. But the thing is that when these protests take place, the people that suffer the most is the average people, not those that refuse to deal with the situation and deal with the problem. And in this case, it would be wage negotiations and so on and so forth. You know, they are not affected by it. The politicians not. The Minister of National Security not going to be affected by it. The Prime Minister not affected by it. None of them is average people just like public sector workers that will have to go through the traffic and the frustration and all these little things. And you know, we had to come to a position where we could deal with it in a different way.
Yeah. So, I mean, my closing comment in 10 seconds.
Yeah, man.
Is this.
In 10 seconds, go ahead.
At the end of the day, yeah, I'll try. You know me. The end of the day, what we have is a psyche that we're dealing with.
Yeah.
It's a psychological issue, because if I feel that I am being unfairly treated and I feel that I'm being robbed of what is mine, then I am going to treat with things a certain way, even though you tell me I can't or I wouldn't or I shouldn't. And that's what we have. We have an issue of discomfort, and we must recognize that the biggest workforce in Trinidad and Tobago is the public sector.
Yeah.
It's a place like some of those progressive nations where the private sector is bigger than the public sector, because that is also a thing that in order to maintain that measure of proper economic development, you can't have the state carrying the brunt of the workload and the brunt of the responsibilities for social stability.
Correct.
And what has happened is we've had that problem because of course, the political issue. So I want to, again, citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, recognize the value of the institution that is a trade union, and the government needs to recognize the importance of putting the people first before any political political initiative and any other bureaucratic initiative.
Yeah.
And practical decisions. And so, Stefan, I mean, we will continue the conversation next week, of course. I think we could take some calls next week.
Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, man. But you have a good day, Trinidad and Tobago.
All right, man. Take it easy. So that is Mr. Narinesingh on the inside. We've got to take a break. When we come back from that break, people, we'll come back to the phone line. Stay tuned.